All right, what's up, guys? Another episode of the Growth by Shawn podcast. Welcome back. We have Darren Janzen here today. Darren, how you doing, brother?
Fantastic, man. Oh, hang on
Beautiful.
one second. I'm sorry about that. In my headphones, I did a podcast with Mark and that just
Yep.
started playing in my ear. So
Oh,
it's all
okay.
good. I got to shut off. Thanks for having me, Shawn. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no. I'm glad that we were able to connect through the Enlifted community. They are growing day by day. So why don't we get into a brief synopsis, however long you want to take it, and roll with it. I'll give you the floor about a little bit about who you are and what you do now, things of that nature. Whichever direction you want to take it, I'm ready to listen.
I love it. I love it. So I am a Canadian living in just outside Nashville right now. I'll give you the Coles notes. So at 21, I got hired as a police officer. I did that for 5 years. Knew it wasn't for me right off the bat, and started. I went to school for firefighting, so started taking a lot of courses, and I got onto a fire department, same city, after 5 years of in policing, and I did that for 10. COVID hit, and we took a leave of absence, and sold everything we owned, and we bought a motorhome, and we toured the U.S. for 9 months. Ended up starting a business down here, landing in Nashville because we're Canadians. We had to leave. Spent some time in Nicaragua, back to Canada. Now we're back in the US. What I do now, I've since retired from firefighting full time. And what I do now is I coach first responders through story work, victim mentality stuff, and like PTSD. So I work one-on-one with first responders, getting into their stories of ouch and pain and sting and woe, as Mark would say.
Mm-hmm.
And we tear it up. And then along with that, we do like the saunas and the ice baths and the breath work. And so we put on workshops. We work one-on-one with people. I am married. I got my beautiful wife, my beautiful bride, Christy. We've been married for, I'm going to get this wrong,
Uh-oh.
16 years.
Okay.
Coming up on 16 years in September. We got three girls that are going to be 13, 11, and 7. So that
Yeah.
is the short version of what I am all about. I just am on my level 2, and for all the enlifted people, I'm just about done level 2, and that has been an awesome framework to add a layer onto the coaching that we do
Mm.
with first responders and the story work.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So yeah, we have a good time doing it. We smile. I'm also I'm an endurance athlete, so I run ultra marathons.
Yeah, that's what I would love to start with is how you got into the ultra marathons, and then uh we'll start to dive into that a little bit once I hear a little bit of the background from it.
Yeah. So I grew up running, being an endurance athlete. So running cross country, doing triathlons from the time I was, I don't know, 5th grade, 6th grade. So I was always doing the endurance, the longer distance stuff. And it's just been on and off my whole life. When I was 17, I ran my first marathon. And then I took quite a break as I was in starting my career. I would run like the 5Ks and the 10K sort of thing. And then I heard, I'm a big fan of Jesse Itzler. Do you know who Jesse Itzler is?
No.
So Jesse Itzler, and do you know who David Goggins is?
Yes.
Yeah. So David Goggins kind of got put on the map by Jesse Itzler. David Goggins
Okay.
ran his first ultra marathon, um, and it was at a track, and he did it to qualify for, I think, Moab 240 or one of those races.
Hmm.
And Jesse Itzler was running that race and saw David Goggins run and was like, this guy's different. So Jesse Itzler invited David Goggins to live with him for a month. Jesse Itzler, his wife
Hmm.
is Sarah Blakely. They own Spanx. They have a bunch of uh they're super successful business
Hmm.
type, right? And and so David Goggins went to live at Jesse's house and to teach him about his mindset.
Hmm.
And then Jesse wrote a book called Living with a SEAL. He doesn't name David Goggins in that book, but that is David Goggins who he's talking about.
Hmm.
Long story short, following Jesse for a long time, he's run a bunch of ultra marathons. So I was like, I want to do this. So I think it was 2019, I ran 100K. With
Hmm.
the goal was 100 miles. It was a 24-hour race. I ran 100K, and I got hooked. And that extra long distance, that sleep depravity, and so I ran. Then as a part of our journey over to the US, when we got here, there was this last man standing race called the Mid-State Mile, the Murder Mile. and I ran that in 2021. Ran another couple, ran a 50K in 2021. 2022, I ran my first 100 miles in September. And then I just ran this mid-state mile again a week ago. So
Right.
that's kind of the ultra journey that took me there. It was yeah, inspired by the David Goggins and Jesse Itzers and hearing those guys' stories of going to I always wanted to run 100 miles. But hearing the stories of people like going into those deep, dark places and finding another level, finding things out about yourself, that's what I didn't want it. I didn't want to have to go there, like do what it took to get there, but I wanted to be there and know what that felt like. So that's a lot of the motivation behind it. And the training, just, you have to be consistent. I believe consistency is the key to anything in life. If you want success and traction, you have to be consistent, and you can only be consistent in so many things. We all want to do 100 different things, and ultra marathon training is like, it's a time commitment. So it's one of those things that it's the long game. It keeps me healthy. It keeps me disciplined. It keeps me motivated. It keeps me doing hard things. So that's the long version. I said it was going to be the Coles notes. That's the long version of the story.
Yeah. So what does training for that look like on a either weekly or monthly basis? And then going from there, what I would love to hear is how you're able to manage that as well as the dad life and how those two coincide.
Right. So this is the first race, the mid-state mile, that I hired a coach. I hired a coach 5 weeks out, and I hired the guy who won last year. He wasn't running this year, so I highly recommend hiring a coach. So he just put together a training plan for me. So I'm used to running by a watch and splits and road running, and I never did. And where we're at in Canada, there's not a lot of trail running, so it was a lot of road work. And so you're just looking at your watch the whole time, or at least that's how I ran. And so he was like, throw away your splits, throw away that. He's like, you're running. The mid-state mile has 340 feet of elevation in each loop, in each mile that you run. It's a 1.1 mile loop. So it's all hill. So he's like, you now run invert. You run in number of feet up and down. Those are your training runs. I don't care how many miles you do. It's your elevation. So I was like, that's super simple. So the training for that was 5 runs a week, and we would have a total vert at the end of the week we're trying to hit. And each day we kind of know where we're trying to hit that. So that was the runs were anywhere between like an hour and 10 to like 3.5 hours to collect that much vert. And then we did one big one that was like a 9-hour effort just to see where we're at as far as the heat and the endurance and just trying to dial in nutrition and hydration for that. So yeah, on a weekly basis, and now I've tapered right down, right? So now I actually haven't run since. I'm just the swelling has reduced and the blisters are bearable now. So I'll go on my first run back today.
Okay.
So on a week now, I'll just maintain. I got another race in October, and I'm looking at one in September. So we'll look at training for that. I mean, to do ultra marathon running, you have to put in the work, but you don't want to beat your body up too much. So my average training as far as mileage will go going forward, I'll maintain like 30 miles a week, 40 miles a week, something like that. So it's a lot, but it's not crazy. Like I'm not spending 20 hours a week running. So, and then as far as managing that with my family, I'm self-employed now, a very flexible schedule. I'll get out early and do it. My wife's the same. She's home with the kids and we homeschool our kids. So, so we work off our schedules and our planners. Right. So when that training block started for those 5 weeks, every run just got put in the calendar, and it was penciled in approximately if it was going to be like early morning, late afternoon. A couple of them were like heat resistance runs. So a couple of them was like these 3 are going to be, between noon and 3:00 in the afternoon. And that's when we'll do those. So yeah, we just run off a schedule, and we're really flexible with that as far as, we have our calls that we have booked and our coaching sessions and all that. And so we just time block. And so I had a training time block for those 5 weeks.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's more manageable than the expectation I had in my head, in a sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like the
so
one in the recovery, like I ran the one on a Saturday. So I ran 9 hours on a Saturday. I started at 6. I took a break. I took a 1 hour break in the middle. And so it was 9 hours. But then that day was a write-off, like going out in the heat for 9 hours. And then the next day was a recovery day. So everyone kind of knew that. And I've gotten better.
mhm.
I did you'll find this interesting. I did 7 hours of one-on-one in lifted coaching for that race.
Oh
So
wow, okay.
Mark, you'll meet Mark Clint, and a guy from my class named Devin. And I
Hmm.
did 7 hours finding mantras, doing mindset stuff, so I credit my coach and the training with my success in that race. And
Hmm.
then he was the most helpful, and a close second is all the Enlifted. I did 7 hours of one-on-one work, um, trying to find the words, trying to find the mindset.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was like the David Goggins. I said, how do we not be angry out there? Right? Like, how do we not?
Hmm.
I don't want to fuel with anger because I don't operate well that way. I know myself.
Hmm.
David Goggins, that's his thing. That's what he does. Great. It's like grin and like, how do you not do the like just grin and bear it? And me and Devin came up with smile and own it. And I smiled the entire race. And all through training, I ran on a hill that had tons of traffic. And I smiled and waved at every car, which sounds ridiculous. But even if they were like, I'd be out there for 3 hours. So some cars would pass 2 or 3 times. And I'd
Hmm.
smile. I didn't care. I smiled the biggest smile, and I waved every single time. And through that race, I smiled. And I actually got a ton of comments afterwards that was like, you were smiling the whole time. I was like, even when it was super painful, I was like, just smile. It makes it
Hmm.
easier and better. Right. So that was that was one of my biggest takeaways from the whole race. It's like, even if something's hard,
Hmm.
smiling makes it better.
Yeah. So going into that, you have different mantras that you were able to use. What are some of the other thoughts that you're focusing on during those harder moments? Is it just that smile, rinse, repeat, or are there certain ways that you're um, focusing on your body or your mind in order to push you to your limits?
So because it's a 1 mile loop, you basically have an aid station every mile. So your crew is there to help you. So I had a bunch of those. I had kind of 3 or 4 that I've memorized were in my head, and I had
Mhm.
written on cue cards a bunch of other ones that my wife would just put out for me on the cooler, and she'd like just reading those. My crew pushed me a ton, and yeah, it was just repeating the 3 or 4, like, this is what it is.
Mm.
Stay present. It was stay present, stay patient, be deliberate, smile and own it. That's kind of
Mm.
because whenever I would trip, it was somewhat of a technical downhill. There's a bunch of roots, and I tripped so many times. Didn't fall, but I tripped so many times. And it was just like, be deliberate. Every time I tripped, I didn't say don't fall. I said be deliberate with your steps, right? Like,
Mm.
it's, what do you want? I want to be deliberate because I don't want to fall, but I'm not going to use a negation. So be deliberate, right?
Mhm.
Stay patient. When you're just waiting for people to drop, it's like it was 35 hours of 1 mile, the same loop over and over again, right? So it's like
Mhm.
you have no choice but to be patient and be present, or else you think too far ahead. And hours 4 to 7, I wanted to give up, and I was already hurting, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, if it doesn't get much worse than this, then I can maintain. This is a fine level of pain. It hurts, and just for the next 30 hours, it
Mhm.
was that same level of pain, but it was fine because I just stayed present in that moment.
Yeah. So how have those moments of pain during the race correlated to the recovery process that you take? I know that you do a lot of heat exposure, cold exposure, things like that. How do those correlate, and what does the recovery process start to look like for you?
Um, I was hoping to do more active recovery. I just wasn't able to. Uh, my ankles were I've never had my ankles blow up. So they're the size of like softballs for a day and a half, and then down to baseballs for the last week. And at night,
Mm.
the swelling would reduce. And by, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I was very aware of that. So I did ice baths, and I'm not doing any heat stuff right now. I did ice
Mhm.
baths, and I got my Theragun, and, worked my feet and worked my legs. And yeah, to be honest, if I'm being 100% honest, my recovery that is the one thing I want to work on, because
Hmm.
I came home and I started eating. I slept a little bit, but I couldn't sleep. So I just went to the kitchen and all I wanted was salty chips. And I ate an entire bag of salty chips over through that night and the next day. And my body was just craving salt. Right. And that
Mm.
kind of started a process of like eating some junk. So I'm like, I've earned it, whatever. And I felt I didn't recover as well as I wanted to. And it's next time, I have the game plan. I got, you know, I got electrolyte mixes and I got salt tabs and I can put salt in my water. So
Hmm.
it's just a bit better recovery. And I do think that slowed me down. So my diet and just even getting active recovery, I could have done some. I was I was worried. I didn't want to overdo it, and I didn't. And my feet were pretty bad, so I should have sucked it up and done more
Mm.
active recovery. But it's neither here nor there at this point, right? It's that's the lesson that I learned post race,
Yeah.
that my recovery should be better. It doesn't really affect the next race or anything like that. I could have, should have, would have done it if I had
Mm.
been more disciplined. So
Gotcha.
that's the good. I mean, I think that's a great takeaway is like I did something super hard,
Hmm.
a super long endurance event. I had a lot of discipline and motivation leading up to it. And then for everyone that's like, oh, I could never do that. And it's, that like people think that everything's always dialed in. It's like, no, I really failed my recovery. If I really were to
Hmm.
give myself a score, it's like, yeah, you got like a 3 out of 10 on your recovery for how well you just got lazy. You're like, I did the thing I was trying to do and I got lazy for a week. Right.
Hmm.
And people can say, oh, you've earned it, you've deserved all those things. True, not true, doesn't matter. For me, I'm like, I know I gave it a real half-assed effort.
Mm. Yeah. So I also want to dive into what um, you're big on breath work and breathing techniques, things of that nature. How did you find different techniques that worked for you? What does it look like now? How do you help others with it?
Okay, so breathwork's super interesting. How I help
Hmm.
others. The first I'll start with how I help others is
Okay.
go read Patrick McCowan's book, Oxygen Advantage.
Mhm.
That's a fantastic book. Start there because he's a guy I haven't devoted my life to breathwork. Have benefit and I've received benefit from doing it and I've read a lot about it, but he's dedicated 20 years to it, right? So
Mhm.
go learn from him. How I learned, right? I'll do like upregulating breath work in the morning, right? Like the Wim Hof, 3 rounds of 30 breaths. It doesn't take long. And that's kind of priming for the day. When a lot of my training runs, I do nasal breathing. So you'll read in the book all the benefits of nasal breathing, but it forces you to stay in zone 2, which is good for endurance training. And you stay in zone 2 heart rate and nasal breathing. And that's how I do a ton of my training. So I don't have to like set aside time to do a ton of breath work because we're all busy. So it sounds, I
Mhm.
mean, we're all busy and we all have time, but it's one of the easiest things to skip. And it's one of the things that has the most benefits, just like drinking water, right? Like drinking
Mhm.
water and breathing, like those are two things that will absolutely make your life way better. Two things that it's really easy to just drink coffee and not as much water and not sit down for, 2 minutes and do some breath work. And then I'm also big on, like before a meal, uh, everyone stops, it's at the table, take 2 deep breaths, right?
Mhm.
and we and you would it's unbelievable. It just sets yourself up to like receive and digest food, like it physiologically, it helps. And then the last thing would be like down regulating breathing. So I'm always wearing like a Garmin watch or something, so I look at my heart rate and I just mess with my breath and see what it does to my body and my heart rate. And I'm big on just taking, 3 to 5 minutes if you're feeling amped up, if you're feeling stressed out, and just down regulating breathing. I think the world of breath work gets so overcomplicated with like box breathing and this
Mhm.
and these numbers and these counts. It's like, man, if you want to if you want to get yourself in a primed state ready to work, upregulate. So your breath in is longer than your breath out and more forceful.
Mm.
If you want to downregulate, your breath out is longer than your breath in, and you like hum a little bit and activate your vagus nerve. But it's just like shorter breaths in mean you're gonna jack your heart rate up.
Mhm.
uh, longer breaths in and more forceful. Longer breaths out means you're going to down regulate. And so I'm just a fan of, because everything can get so complicated. Keep it super simple and use it what works for you.
Hmm. So had you practiced even simple things like nasal breathing during some of your earlier days of running, or um, had this been something that you started to implement at a later time? And depending on the answer, I mean, I'm curious to what runs used to look like, perhaps breathing through your mouth into your chest versus what a run looks like just nasal breathing.
Yeah. So the nasal breathing has been like a year. I've
Mm,
like paired with running. So I've had a good tour of it. And
mm-hmm,
yeah, a lot of my running goals are different now. Even though I would train for endurance events, I always like being able to run a really quick mile, a really quick 5K. So it's next to impossible to nasal breathe through that.
mm-hmm,
And I have a hard time not looking at my watch and competing against myself. So I threw all that out the window, and I would turn off I just put the timer in the not my pace, just the timer and the distance on my watch. And then I switch it to just the heart rate setting, the screen, and
mm-hmm,
I would run nasal breathing, heart rate only. So I would just, if as soon as I got above 145, my heart rate, I'd slow down. So I was running. So it was very hard for me because I felt like I was running incredibly slow. So then I just
mm-hmm,
started doing timed runs. So I'd do a 45-minute run, nasal breathing, heart rate. So it didn't matter at the halfway point. I like when I'd be, 25 minutes in, I turn around
mm-hmm,
and do a cool down. And then at the end of my runs, I would do, if you read the Oxygen Advantage
mm-hmm.
book, it's all about, everyone thinks oxygen is, in the name of the title, is the most important gas that you're dealing with when you're trying to build a good respiratory system. But it's actually carbon dioxide, and that exchange and building up a tolerance to carbon dioxide. So at
Mm-hmm.
the end of my runs, I'd walk and I'd take like 10 breaths in, and then I'd exhale all the air, plug my nose, hold my breath, and I'd walk for 15, 20 paces. And then I'd try and take a nice controlled breath in. 10 breaths, exhale, and I do this CO2 tolerance training to try and build up. Yeah, right. You have that reflex that's like your diaphragm's contracting because you're trying to take in oxygen because your brain is saying we're building up carbon dioxide, right? So that's kind of the things I did in the last year leading up to trying to, and my engine has definitely gotten stronger. Like my respiratory engine and my heart rate, my average heart rate on my runs now is I can run much faster nasal breathing at a lower heart rate, but it took a year.
Mm,
That's the thing that I'm not patient. And that's the thing that I had to realize, like, this is going to take a while. This is going to take a while to build this up.
yeah. Yeah, that it's like if I was to go out and run and just nasal breathe, I'm not much of a runner personally. So if I was to go out and take a run, especially just nasal breathing, I'd have a much more difficult time than you would if we were to go and run together, that's for sure. Um, I do want to move away from the breath work and your running and what you do coaching wise. So I think a good start to this would be why you decided to um, retire from firefighting to begin.
So I took my leave of absence because we wanted to travel as a family.
Hmm.
We're in a position to do that. So that was kind of the start, a bunch of COVID stuff. I'll leave that alone.
Hmm.
Um, it was clear into that we wanted to move down to the States. And so we knew, like, for being Canadians, we had to do a bunch of visa stuff and business stuff. And so that's the road that we decided to take. And so we decided to rip the Band-Aid off and say, we're going to commit to this. We're going to commit to this process, and we're going to commit to helping where I once was as a firefighter and cop, as
Hmm.
far as emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, and commit to. I don't have all the answers. I don't have nearly all the answers.
Hmm.
but I've come somewhere and I've arrived to a place that is a good place, and I have something to offer. So we said, let's do this, and let's commit to this, and let's not go half-assed on it. Let's make this something that's, give it the what's the word I'm trying to use? Give it like the full send commitment that it deserves. And then there's no turning back, right? There's no safety net to go back on. So it's like, we this is important to us. This is what we're going to do. So, and through that process, this has been a process of discovering tons about fitness, breathing, thermal, like hot and cold exposure, thermal exposure, and a ton of learning. And then into the enlifted side of like the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And I've done quite a bit of coaching now with first responders, and just I'm a part of a group called Apogee Strong, which is run by a guy named Matt Boudreau and Tim Kennedy, which is amazing. A bunch of like ninja men who are like killing it in their lives. And I've done a bunch of coaching calls with them, with first responders, and it's like, when you see someone who you think has everything together, it's like you peek behind the curtain and it's like they do have everything together, and they struggle with a lot. And there's a lot in the world that have men not able to express what they feel, express where they're struggling, and be okay with that, without being weak, and without feeling weak, and not being weak, but coming from a place of strength. So to see men go through just a transformation of how they view themselves, like it's that mindset thing, the story we tell ourselves to ourselves about ourselves, right? Like to see men come out on the other. And so I do coaching for men. My wife took and lifted because she can coach women, and for us, that's the best way that we operate. So I just coach men, just first responders, and that's where we're at. And it has been an eye-opening, humbling, and super rewarding experience to just walk alongside men and participate with these first responders who start off in a profession all about service. It's all about service and putting yourself out there and being willing to risk everything for someone you don't even know. And at the end of the day, a lot of them, for everything that they see and experience and shift work and PTSD and all those things, they end up sacrificing more than they have to, because they don't know how to handle how all these, how do I operate as a savage, as a police officer when I need to, because that is sometimes required, and then go home and parent my 1-year-old in a very gentle way, right? Like it's this Todd Herman has this book called Alter Ego, like switching on and off like different egos for the appropriate, not being two different people, but switching off different egos when it's appropriate, right? Because as men, we're being taught right now, like, toxic masculinity and all that, and all these things. And it's like, well, when there's a war, we want warriors. And when those warriors come home, we want them to be able to be gentle, loving, and care. We don't need the warrior when they're at home. Right. So it's helping men through that process of how do we coexist, and how do we figure out the story that we're telling ourselves. Like, I can't be that because over here I'm this, right? So that's a lot of, we go anywhere where anyone wants to go, and we don't touch anything that they don't want to touch, right? That's what Mark says. If you want to go there, let's go there. Let's dig in. And if you don't, I don't either, right? It's a team effort, but we're on whoever we're talking to, we're on their team. So it's really fun. I don't know if you've gone through the trauma bear stuff that he'll take you through, but
we did
trauma bear, and then trauma bonding as well. It's like, I can take 6 calls in a day, and I'm not exhausted because I'm breathing right and I'm engaged, but I'm not taking on that story. I'm not taking on that other person's story. So, yeah.
I would love to backtrack a little bit, and I think this will be really cool and interesting for people to hear. What made you guys decide that you want to come live in the US versus Canada from the get-go there?
Well, one, when we came down, we landed in the Nashville area.
Okay.
And there's something for me about the Southern hospitality that is
Mm,
like, we were in an RV and we had dinner at so many strangers' houses along the way. We did laundry at, I can't count. Like, we just met the best people in this house. So we kind of toured uh Nashville. So we're like Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, Alabama. We're in there for a while, down to Texas. And we just made a lot of really fast lifelong friends in Tennessee,
mhm,
like off the bat. And so we didn't come down to the States saying like we want to move to the States. We came down to tour it, to visit it, to look and see, to see the sights, to have a good time. And a lot of it has to do there would be a piece of it that has to do like culturally and politically with what's going on
mhm,
with COVID and what
mhm,
governments are deciding to do. And then there's the other pieces, like my kids are like horse fanatics. They love horses. So we bought some property
mhm,
down here. We're going to get some horses. They're homeschooled, so
so
they're
cool.
home all the time. So we're doing like really there's a piece that's financially where we're at to
Mhm,
do the farming, even the hobby farming thing. It wouldn't be feasible in half the year's winter. So you don't get outside for ride your horse. Like, you need a barn, you need heated, all these things. So a lot of it has to do with just the family day-to-day life that we want to live, the climate
mhm.
here and the cost of living, and how we can make that work for our family. It's That was the biggest driver for us.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
just because like I've always lived in the United States and I've talked with a few select people, but not an overwhelming amount of people that are from a different country or region and move here, or they're still across seas, and what life is like there, what life is like here, and how they correlate, how they're different. And it's interesting to me to hear things like that. Going back into what you do now, coaching first responders, and helping people, I feel like it's some type of dance where just as you were saying, the warrior on the field versus the nurturer at home, in a sense, and figuring out how we can uh, have both sides and be happy with both sides as well. So, what made it so that you wanted to? And this may be an easier question to answer than I'm asking, but what made it so that you just wanted to work with the first responders as opposed to a wider niche of people?
Um, Part of it is I think we're most equipped to help the people that we once were.
Mm,
So, um, not that I can't relate to a CPA, an accountant, or a
hmm
lawyer going through a hard time. Um, I think I don't think we are most equipped to help to help the people that we came out of, the places we came out of. The second piece is I see a big gap in the first responder community as far as mental health. Everyone's doing everything they can. This is like a new, um, so if you're like the baby boomer, what is it, Gen Z
I don't know all the
generation.
specifics of
If you're like between 40 and 60 right now,
yeah.
your average time till you lose time off to PTSD would be 15 years. 15 years on, well, this is a firefighting statistic, 15 years on the
Mhm,
job. Your average time uh, to till you start losing time off due to PTSD is 15 years.
mhm,
If you're under 40, it's 7 years. Like, it's twice as quickly people are taking time off due to PTSD. So it is a growing epidemic. There's so many reasons we can get into for what that
mhm,
is. It's not really necessary. Um, but departments and chiefs and cities, they don't know what to do because this
mhm,
is a new thing. And so I have had success in areas where I'm like, I can help. I have something to offer.
mhm,
I know a path. I know a path. It's not the path for everybody, but I know a path where we can get some traction and help people. When
mhm,
I had issues with PTSD and mental health on the job, uh, dealing with the city, I'm sure it's gotten better, but dealing with the city and dealing with HR, I said, F it. Um, this is so frustrating. I'm going to find my own solution and pay for it out of pocket. And I was happy to do that because it's my health, right? A
mhm,
lot of people aren't. Like, a lot of people will spend, you know, whatever, drop $1,000 on their car for to get it maintained, and they won't spend $100 at a chiropractor or go to talk to someone because they think it should be covered. I think it should be covered too, but at the end of the day, it's your life and your body, and like spend the money on what you have forever, which is this right here. What you have forever is this. So spend the money. So I came out of that camp. So I'm like, okay, people will spend, and we're trying to work with cities right now to see what we can offer and how we can get people help. Yeah, what was the question? It was, why first responders, right? Yeah. Also from the business standpoint, like it is a business. So niching down into a market, and when I talk to people, I'm talking to someone, I'm not just talking to men. I'm talking to a specific group, and it allows me to be very specific in the things that we offer, as opposed to having to be like this catch-all. And then the last thing would be, so I've gone to psychiatrists, psychologists, psychotherapists, whatever, right? You name it, I've gone to see them over my 15 years in emergency services. And there is something about talking to a doctor that doesn't actually know what you've been through that doesn't quite land. It's like, well, try reading this book and try doing this. And it's like, so I've come out of a place where I know if someone talks to me about a traumatic incident that they've been involved in, chances are I've gone through something, witnessed something, been a part of something very similar. So the instant connection and where we're able to get to, it goes much faster because there's an instant level of connection, and there's an instant trust and respect that I have for them and they have for me, that I can talk to someone and we can get to where we got to get to much, much quicker, because there is that mutual respect and mutual knowledge that like this person knows. He's not just giving. And then the other part is it's I've given up the giving answers, right? I just ask questions. Like I ask questions and let whoever's needs some help figure it out, because that lands way better, and that lasts, as opposed to me being like, read this book and try this breathing exercise. It's like, no, like those are good things, but that's not the solution. So those are the I don't know, 3 or 4 reasons that I'm just dealing with first responders, just men. Like I can dial that in. And when we do like group workshops and stuff like that, I mean, if you're a female in the industry, yeah, come on out, right? Like when we're doing in-person live stuff, and we got a retreat planned for November in Nicaragua. So that's so like, yeah, any first responder, military, vet, retired, whatever, doors are open. But as far as the group and the one-on-one stuff, I like to stick to, like you said, like a more niche market.
Yeah. It's, which way did I want to take this first? Because I had two parts that I want to break down here. But it's so fascinating and interesting how we became so fixated on all the material successes, in a sense, like spending $1,000 a month on a car payment, or going out to dinner every single week for $500, but won't spend $400 on your health and the body and the vehicle that you have. What do you think happened? Like what, it's what happened.
I think about this a lot because like in Canada, it's free healthcare, right? In Canada, you don't need Medicare. I don't even know what they have down here, but almost everything's free. And then if you have a job, like they have a benefit plan that covers like dental's not totally free. So they cover extra dental, and they're covering massage, and they're cover chiropractor, but like there's always limits to it. So it's like, oh, you get, $1,500 a year massage. But what if you want to use 2,000? What if you want to spend? Well, people won't, because they're like it in Canada. My take is it's always been mostly free. So everyone expects it to be free. So when they have to pay, they're like, that's not right. It should be free.
Yeah.
Well, if it's not free, I'm not going to do it, because like I have 10 sessions covered. So I'll do the 10. It's like, but 20 would be way better. So just spend the money there. And yeah, I think about that a lot, where society spends their money and where they neglect. And it's like, it's so backwards, and we're neglecting the thing that we need to put in the forefront. And I
Mhm.
do it too. There are times that I do it too. And it's like I choose to save a little bit of money as opposed to buying I mean, organic. I mean, that's a rabbit hole that we could go down. That is organic, really organic and better. And
Mhm.
who's making like, uh, but yeah, like even getting yourself in the mindset of buying the organic, of saying, okay, I don't know if it's better or not.
Mm.
Like I'm not fully convinced, but
Mhm.
I'm gonna this is a this is me tricking my brain into saying I'm putting my health above the dollars,
Mhm.
right? I'm deciding to not do something else maybe because I'm gonna put the money into myself. And I think that's a small way. I don't think that is a small way that we can like start buying the better food,
Mhm.
and that just kind of will trickle into like, oh, I care about what I'm feeding myself. I care more. Okay, then I'll go the next step. It's like I will pay for the extra chiropractic, osteopath, whatever things people want to use, or I'll yeah. Even
Mhm.
even like buying the right running shoes for me. I'm like, I just had a conversation at a store with buying my kids running shoes because
Mhm.
I'm very much, I don't know, I have weird fascinations and I'm into foot health, right? Like
Mhm.
all the running shoes that we wear are mostly garbage and they're
Mhm.
mostly bad for you and they cause a ton of foot, knee, ankle, hip, back pain.
Mhm.
And there's good running shoes out there. They just look kind of dumb. They don't look as nice. The selection's not as good, but they're way better for you. So yeah, I got a like a thumbs up from the lady at REI. She's like, because my daughter didn't want the shoes that I was making her buy, and I'm like, no,
Mhm.
like you can buy one of these colors, but
Yeah.
we're not buying Nikes. Not that I have
Mhm.
anything against Nike. I just am
Yeah.
like, there's a bet for every day. If you want to run and race in them, great, but there's a better thing for your foot. So
Mhm. Yeah. I
try and
mean,
make the small decisions.
I'm wearing the toe spacers now,
Yeah, good for you.
just as I'm sitting here, But yeah, the whole organic,
So
not organic.
you're weird too then.
Yeah, I'm weird
You're a
too.
bit
I'm
weird. I
weird
love it.
too. Yeah,
I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. I'm 100% weird. I mean, let's get weird and gross or whatever other strange taboo words you want to use. But
Yeah.
where was I going with this? Yeah, the whole organic, not organic. That's a whole another thing. But not even just like the food that we're buying at the store, but how are they making it? We don't know how are they producing it. I think farmers markets are one of the fast tracked ways to improve the quality of your foods. And even with that, you don't it's hard. It's hard. You don't 100% know either way. I mean, when I have a piece of chicken and it's all like slimy and stuff like that versus a piece of chicken that like at least doesn't slip out of my hands in a sense, you know that there's a difference in the quality and like the steroids that they pumped into the chicken and things of that nature. But where was I where was I going
I
with the food? You
I
go,
have a
you go.
I have a
Yeah,
thought on that.
yeah.
When my diet is dialed in,
Hmm.
and this wasn't a lifted thing. Well, two
Hmm.
things. So Christy, my wife said, she's like, have you noticed after taking a lifted, she's like, have you noticed like most of the packaging says, you know, made without the use of antibiotics, made without
Hmm.
hydrogen, whatever, made without. And she's like,
Hmm.
they're telling us all the negations that no one puts on it
Oh,
what's in it.
wow. Yeah.
She's like, no one puts on it like, "Oh, hey, we have 70 ingredients, but we don't have this one."
Yeah.
Like that's what most of them are, right? We
Yeah.
have so it's the negation as far as like, oh, that's really when I go to the grocery store, I look at all the packaging and I'm very interested. When my diet is dialed in, I experienced this for the first time this year. I wrote out what my eating plan was, and I didn't write don't eat sugar, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat. I wrote exactly what I was going to eat when I was going to eat it, and it was super boring, and it was the same
Hmm.
thing over and over, and I loved it. And I think even among the food conversation, we just want so much variety when I
Hmm.
mean, you can be the vegan camp, you can be the carnivore camp. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. For me, I lean more towards the carnivore camp
Hmm.
just personally,
Hmm.
it's what I feel good on. It's like I would eat eggs, beef, some chicken, a few veggies, and fruit. But it's
Hmm.
like I would only eat like 12 to 15 ingredients.
Hmm.
That's all I ate all week.
Hmm.
And so I think if you can pare down your like go out and have a nice meal and all those things,
Hmm.
enjoy your food. But if you can pare down how many different things you eat, it's not so daunting to be like, can I eat this? Can I eat this? It's like, just make yourself boring and eat mostly the same thing, and you'll
Mhm.
have a lot of success. And just decide what you're going to eat, not what you're not going to eat.
Mhm. I mean, when there's the whole conversation around the quantity of food, the quality of food, look at these macro-based diets and things like that work, but how is your energy when you're doing things like that versus someone that doesn't track their calories that eats more of the real food in a sense? And how are their bodies different? How are their bodies responding? What is their sleep like? What is the rest of their input like? There's so many different factors to it, and there's so many different conversations that we could have just around that. But what I remember my point from what you were talking about. So we look at um, someone that gets 10 massages for free, but really the benefit is going to be in 20, right? And the 10 that are free, that's great. That the other 10 they don't want to purchase. But then we look at something like coaching, and we if someone was to gift it to us for free, we don't see as much of a benefit to it. It's this weird double-edged sword of like things that are free and how we perceive the value of what's free. If you gave away all your coaching for free, there would still be benefit in it, but people aren't going to receive the full benefit from it. Versus you get 10 massages and you're like, "Oh, great, this is awesome," but then the other 10 you're not willing to spend. It's just this weird double-edged sword of how things are free and how we perceive what's free, and I don't even know if there's a question there.
Sean, brother, that is no, that is such a great point. That like those last 10 massages,
Mhm,
you would get more benefit because you're sacrificing for them. You're sacrificing
mhm,
time and money, and it's an extra thing. And you'd be like, I'm really gonna like I'm gonna relax before really gonna prepare because this is
mhm,
costing me something. No, that is.
mhm.
And with coaching, I was just
Yeah,
on a call with a friend coaching. So
mhm,
he's starting his business, trying to get clients, and he has one paying client and two friends agreed to do it.
mhm,
Um, but they don't really want to pay. And he's just like, it's just been this complete nightmare with the friends that want to do that, say they want to do it, but they just kind of want to help him out, but they're not willing to do the
mhm.
work. And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, like to give something away for free that has that much value, it's not received the same. And
yeah.
so yeah, that correlates and corresponds to, food and all the things that we do for our health.
Yeah, everything
Yeah.
that's all intertwined and wrapped into one big umbrella.
Yeah, totally.
But as we start to wrap up here, I'll have our last question, okay? So this is a question that was left from the last guest. Um, he didn't know who was chatting or anything, but this is from David Waldy. He is a fierce empathy coach. He's a really, really great guy. So David is interested, what is your specific definition of success and why does it look like that?
My definition of success, I could go on. So I'm going to keep it in one lane and short. Um, to have freedom and autonomy over my time.
Mhm. Okay.
That's it.
Mhm.
And it looks like that because I spent a lot of years working nights, working weekends, working birthdays, working holidays,
Mhm.
and I gave up a lot of memories and moments.
Mhm.
I am not angry or ungrateful for any of it. It's made me who I am today. But if I had the choice is that I am in control of my time completely.
Mm. So to leave a nice, I love that. That's a lot of what a lot of people chase. And I think it's important to define it for yourself in order to actually know what you want as opposed to know everything that you don't want. Because that's just as easy to come up with. As a nice cliffhanger for our next episode, though, I will ask you for a question for our next guest.
I love that. I kind of want to go the spirituality realm. I'm trying to
Okay.
think here.
We've had many different, I like asking this question because I appreciate you for actually taking the time to think about it. You're searching hard here, you know?
Oh yeah.
And I've had a variety of different questions on success, and some are funny, and some are spiritual, and some are deep, and you never know. You never know.
What what's the best book you've read on spirituality? Uh, and why?
Right. That's a good one. So, how we will wrap up here, Darren, I appreciate you for your time. If you want to let us know where we can find you, and uh, how we could have a conversation with you or work with you, or none of the above, it's up to
Yeah.
you.
No, so I'm on Instagram, Darren Janzen, or Breathe 911. That's the company that we have that we coach under is called Breathe 911. And then we have a website, breathe-911.com. And yeah, those are the two places that I'm at.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
look me up. Have a
sure.
conversation. I love chatting with anybody. So anybody, there is no hard selling. There's no nothing. I'm here
Mm,
to engage and communicate and be in community with people. So
yeah,
uh yeah, if you have any questions or any comments or want to just have a conversation, get in touch. I would love that.
awesome. Beautiful. Thanks, Darren. That'll do it for
Thanks.
us today, guys. All right. Take care.